Name is Bridget Bettke. I'm the managing director of the Pelham Art Center. I've been here for over 24 years in lots of different roles, but recently, last May 2024, I was named managing director, which is great. And I was thrilled to see the show here, Think About Water. It has brightened up our lives in the past couple of weeks and really has shown the community what it was all about. And really, like, I know when I get into the facility, it makes me feel very calm and meditate, so thank you for that. And the exhibition is showing in our gallery through April 13th. And I'm going to put it over to Lisa Reindorf, the curator of this wonderful show.
Thank you, Bridget. I'm glad that you find it very calming because as the curator, I wanted to focus on some of the positive elements of water. So to give a background, we are part of a collective known as Artists Think About Water. And it's composed of a lot of artists who have spent decades working, educating, practicing, addressing global issues issues. And generally, when artists deal with climate change and some of these water issues, there's a very negative take because a lot of negative things are happening, such as heat waves and periods without rain, drought, acidification, shrinking bodies of water, rising sea levels, saltwater intrusion. I could go on. And many of us who are in environmental art circles know about these issues. But when I chose to put together this exhibit, I decided to ignore the gloom and doom because water is also a source of regeneration and it nurtures us and nature and flora and fauna and the environment. So there's positive things that can happen, like wetlands protecting against sea rise and flooding, and bodies of water in both rivers and lakes are also a source of wonder and energy. So the artists that are in this exhibit have kind of taken that as their cue to do some positive work. And I'm glad that, as you say, Bridget, has the effect of calming people and inspiring people. So we're just going to take a few minutes to talk about our work and how it relates to the theme. And I'm going to turn it over first to artist Fredericka Foster to talk about her wonderful work.
Thank you, Lisa. My water series began after years of work using global imagery from different faiths. Earlier, peoples understood that water belonged to everyone, and sacred places were sited near rivers, often on the ruins of a previous faith. Today, we seem to have forgotten that our bodies are mostly water that flows through every living being. Through baptism, purification, ceremony, and art, we express our intimacy within the water cycle. Looking at water or a painting of water resonates emotionally in our bodies and minds. Paintings using tools of color and composition can be an aid to societal change. Art accesses another way of knowing, and it takes both rationality and emotional connection to create lasting change. Water is the ultimate global commons. Indigenous people say water is life. All life. We are profoundly connected to one another and every other species. Knowing this, we also know we all live downstream. Painting water returned me to my Norwegian heritage, as grandmother came from fishing Sami, living north of the Arctic Circle. Also, I have lived on lakes or rivers or bays. Water, constantly moving and completely abstract, satisfies my desire to paint formally in acrylics and oils, using imagination to explore my vision, using the rhythms and forms that appear on the canvas. Colors are arbitrary, relying on my unconscious, my emotions, and what the paint is telling me. Images are a form of direct mental targeting, and when the subject matter is water, that target is our heart, our sense of connection, and our intuition. And one moment while I share my screen. Thank you. Okay. Water is a rich subject matter. For example, plants, the water eaters, the light eaters, use water in the soil for food while giving us oxygen from water. Water lilies, filtering pollutants, rise through water with their leaves floating on the surface and provide habitat and shade, preventing excessive algae growth. Lilies are associated with spiritual growth, emerging from the mud and into the light to bloom. And this brings me right back to where I entered the water series. I listen to water bodies, the water within me and the water I drink, to try to understand how I might be of use to water. Writing down my dreams, I seek guidance from that quieter world. At twilight, rays of the sun play with water, pulling us into a world of mystery. Water is the ultimate shapeshifter, ever-changing, never fully grasped, and always holding something unknown beneath its surface. A lot to try to capture in the painting Twilighting. Water is a living force, and most people who sit beside a body of water will know a profound sense of connection that draws them back again and again, as Venice is noted for doing. Venice has an amazing relationship to water, as we all know, and when you're writing the Vaporetto, you see the results of modern chemicals and human waste going into the canals. Eventually, all the pollutants get washed out to sea, and hopefully Venetian life can go on as it has for 3 millennia. We can get back to a healthy ecosystem by learning from nature, as indigenous peoples have traditionally done. Water issues are coming into everyone's mind. As we heal water, we heal the earth, we heal ourselves. While this is a time of great danger, I believe it's also a time of great hope. Thank you. And I'd like to ask Roz to share next.
Thanks, Fredericka. I'm Roz Driscoll. I live in Massachusetts, and I'm privileged to be a member of this group. When I first became aware of the global crises affecting water, that was about 10 years ago, my first artistic response was a collaborative performance with a filmmaker in London called Moving Water. We offered audience members an opportunity to move through the space and play with and exchange water. We had all these unusual vessels. And at one point, there was a dramatic moment when someone intentionally dropped one of the vessels and the water spilled, which is a moment that became a seed for a performance, a full-blown theatrical performance, also called Moving Water, when I came back home, for which I served as dramaturg. Basically, in all these efforts, I wanted to raise the alarm, and I wanted to draw and connect people with their universal love of water. So the artworks in this exhibition are manifestations of my love of water, combined with my knowledge of the threats to its well-being. The material I've used in these sculptures, which I'll show you in a moment, is the antithesis of water. Rawhide, the untanned skin of cows. So just to speak again, come back to the rawhide, which is, it's a material, it's untanned cow skins, which I've used for many years. And in some ways, it's an ironic, intentionally ironic use for these sculptures about water with their flowing watery ripples. It's contradicted by the material itself. Let's see if I can share my screen. This piece is made of rawhide and cloth and rope, as you can see. So rawhide also represents the skin we have in the game, as it were, because we're utterly dependent on water for so many, almost every aspect of our lives. By our misuse and abuse of water, we are literally dehydrating our bodies. The 3 sculptures in this exhibition are all made primarily of rawhide. The scent, this one that you see on the left, it merges the form of a cascading stream with the form of Jesus Christ being lowered from the cross, an imagery that I've been very interested in and moved by for a long time. So I'm combining these two forms to suggest kind of complicated meanings of sacrifice. And the one on the left is actually called sacrifice, which again is made of rawhide in the shape of a river that's wrapped in gauze bandage. It also looks like a dragon, which is a perennial symbol of water's destructive and creative powers. The third piece is called Headwaters. And in this case, I was thinking of a spring emerging from the ground. Springs are where groundwater reaches the surface. They're traditionally seen as sacred sites, a portal between the surface world and the underworld. And they're also seen as manifestations of regeneration and abundance. Springs are also sensitive indicators of groundwater and ecosystem health. When I saw other artists working with various aspects of water when I joined this group, I chose to focus on springs and groundwater because I didn't see anyone else doing that. Groundwater is threatened worldwide from overuse and climate change. Because groundwater is largely unseen and difficult to track or to measure, we've exploited it and mined it, usually without regulation or conservation. And that leads to shrinking aquifers, subsiding land, and wells and springs drying up. It's the very hidden nature of groundwater that makes art a powerful way to make it more visible. And one of the major influences on my work has been connection with the tribal peoples of the Southwest in Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico, where springs are considered to be inhabited by the water serpent, which is kind of like the figure on the right, the dragon figure. Water serpent is a beneficent being that lives in springs, but it doesn't just represent the spring, it represents the entire water cycle. So that effort to bring groundwater and springs into the whole water cycle is part of what I'm all about. Thank you. And I will pass that to Lauren.
I'm Lauren McManus. I live in Lambertville, New Jersey. And I use geospatial data and site-specific pigments generally to make maps of freshwater systems. I'm going to share my screen straight away, if I can, to show the image of the two pieces that are in the show at the Pelham Art Center. These pieces are really special to me because they were a kind of first foray into community-based collaborative practice. So in the summer of 2019, I spent 10 weeks as an artist in residence at McManus Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. While there, I experimented with the design and implementation of eco-art mapping workshops with Studio 345, a free creative arts program for Charlotte area students. Over the course of 4 sessions, I collaborated with both middle and high school students to create 2 maps of Charlotte's urban streams. Together, we transformed rocks and soil into artful expressions of place, while students gained a personal understanding of urban water ecology and the implications of our interdependence. The local watersheds of Charlotte serve not only as subject matter, but also as a framework for thinking about boundaries, notions of home, and definitions of community. These resulting paintings are multi-sectional maps of the Sugar Creek Basin, made from the textures and colors of Charlotte's urban landscape. The middle school group made rubbings of natural textures at 4th Ward Park and painted over them with red clay pigment collected along the Little Sugar Creek Greenway. The high school group made rubbings of industrial textures in the streets around Spirit Square and painted over them with blue granite collected at a Vulcan materials quarry in Pineville. Together, these two seemingly identical maps exhibit subtle differences and collectively comment on the varied systems that influence the nature and quality of Charlotte's waterways. I'll just say one last thing before I pass it on, which is that having this sort of aerial or God's eye view of these systems allows us to see the sort of patterns, those fractal geometries that exist in so much of nature and inside of our own bodies and connect us to each other and to the natural world. And so that's a really important part of the work. I will go ahead and pass along to Susan.
Muted.
Unmute, Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Hoffman Fishman, and I live in West Hartford, Connecticut. I am a multimedia painter or mixed media painter and also an arts writer. I think I'm going to start out by sharing my screen. The land around bodies of water and the bodies of water themselves that have been shrinking dramatically all over the world. There are 53% of our lakes, inland lakes and seas are drastically smaller than they once were just decades ago. My inspiration for all of this came from my participation in a residency at Planet Labs in California. And this was kind of a dramatic change in my work because I was able to look at bodies of water all over the world and to observe, how they have changed over time. And so I started looking at the Dead Sea as the first body of water. And you can see by the slide that what has changed in just 50 years and what is predicted, in the next 50 years. What's causing this is clearly climate change. The water is evaporating much faster than normal. Also, the extraction for industrial and human use. There is a factory at the bottom of the Dead Sea called the Dead Sea Works that extracts minerals for the cosmetics industry, and they extract every day millions of gallons of water. What is happening around the Dead Sea is that as the water retreats, huge numbers of sinkholes are developing. So there are over 5,000 to 8,000 sinkholes around the entire Dead Sea, including the coasts of Israel and Jordan. And on the left, you can see a drone image, and on the right, you can see a satellite image. And what struck me the most about this is another drone image is that the destruction that's occurring to the land is also quite beautiful. So I have a body of work of which the three images in the show are part of that's called The Earth is Breaking Beautifully. And this was the first one that I did 3 years ago. Several years ago, and I have to say that I'm actually using in the images cyanotype prints of satellite images. So the materials that I have been using are satellite images themselves, cyanotype prints, and mixed media on either paper or panels. This is one of the images in the show. It is called The Dead Sea Then and Now. And what I was trying to capture on the top of the image, is a reproduction of the Mataba murals that exist in Jordan that are thousands of years old that show that showed sailing vessels on the Dead Sea, and which, it demonstrates how active and how vibrant the sea was at that time. Okay, we're moving to Siberia, where there are other kinds of sinkholes, and these sinkholes are caused by melting permafrost. As the permafrost melts, the earth explodes, creating hundreds and hundreds of sinkholes. This is a cyanotype print of a satellite image. And this is another one, happens to be stained with tea, which gives it that tan color. Okay, this is the Aral Sea in 1984 and in 2020. The Aral Sea at this point is almost completely dry as of this year. And this is happening, as I said, to 53% of our lakes, and probably an increasing amount as the years go by. The other two images that I have in the exhibition are portrayals of what's happening in the Aral Sea.
Thank you, and thank you all. This is actually interesting for me too, to see everybody's presentation. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, if I can. See if this works. I think, does that work? I don't think you. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So when I look to water, I come with questions really, and I looked to ask it about its changes and changes in the environment, because water is the connective tissue in many ways. Whether it is an essential element of life for animals, it is an essential life for animals, for plants, and a mode of transportation. Water in itself is always changing. And as water changes, it changes the environment around. And so what I'm talking about in this piece in particular is a flood that happened in Vermont that I was privy to. And it's really, this particular piece is called A River Breaking. And it's really the interaction between nature and humans. And that connection and the essentialness of us paying attention to nature. This is a piece called Navigating the Dark. And partly, this one, it talks really about, as water changes, it really does change the environment, whether through erosion or flooding or nutrients or drought. And what we as humans do upstream will, through the water, affect what happens downstream. Water is ephemeral, and with little effort, it's just like softly runs through our fingers. So it's like really, and at the same, it's ephemeral and also monumental and powerful. So I wanted the viewer to really see the connection between both of those. Let me see if I can show you the last one, because I'm going to go faster. I'm sort of trying to edit as we talk. Oops, hold on. This is really, I'm just going to be really quick about this. This is really about a water system where water can go underground and above ground, and it's called the Gravel River System. And I was really trying to document it for a show out west where they were trying to put boundaries around the water, and only, my background is actually in botany, and I used to work in the Western region as a botanist, and kept understanding that water really goes down through the ground but can come up elsewhere. And so in this particular piece, I really wanted to document the gravel bed river system. And I'll be quick and then pass it on to Leila.
So I'm actually not going to start with screen sharing because I hope that you've all seen the wonderful show. And it's really amazing. I particularly love what Lisa did in that one room where everything flows. It's just incredible the way it flows. And I sent a video. I don't know if I assume everybody saw it. But anyway, I'm currently right now in my studio, which is the only sane part of my life. And even this is quite a mess because I've had to dump a lot of stuff from downsizing to the studio in order to, anyway. I feel like my life is flowing like water right now, and I can't pen anything down. But I thought what I would do is show you a few things in the studio. I grew up in West Virginia, where I was very aware of what human activity could do to the environment. And I am a rabid environmentalist, and not just water, but I think primarily water, because as others of you have said, water is kind of the underpinning of just about everything. And I think of water as this incredible force, not just for positive things. In fact, most of my work is a little bit maybe depressing. Let's see. I don't know if you can see this one. This is it's called Essential Survivor, and it's a shipwreck of multiple ships. But one of us always has to remain. I don't know. Can you see that?
Leila, can you talk just for 1 minute about what your medium is? Because that's really fascinating.
Well, I can do that. The medium I'm working with is it's a Burmese technique, but which I've amended in multiple ways. But it starts with hand woven threads. And one of the things I like about working with threads is that water is like threads. So the water, again, threads. Can you see these threads? Are they coming through?
Switch around the screen.
Well, I think I can, but I don't know how to do that. Do you?
Let me see. Yeah, right here. You see this?
Yeah. Oh, cool. This is what I wanted. Thank goodness I have a studio assistant. Okay. So I feel like water is threads. It works like threads. You can see it flowing like threads. And so I like my media to be related to what I do. And this is the material which I got in Burma the last time I was there, and probably the last time I will ever be there. And I'm running out of it. But what I do is I work with this thread and also with beads. Beads I have over here. Beads. And they have the same kind of physicality for me that water has, that earth has, that all the things that make up the environment share with the materials that I use. And I do sometimes collect things like mica. You're looking at this one upside down, but like mica and earth pigments, which are actually, they exist in nature. They're refined by Golden and other companies that make paints, of course. But I like to use things that have the kind of physicality that water, that earth, and that the environment has. So that's what I am working with.
Thanks, Leila. We have 10 minutes left. So how about Ellen? does 5 minutes and then I'll finish up.
I'm Ellen Kozak, and a painter as well as a video artist. I have worked beside the Hudson River for over 35 years, and that's the river behind me. I'm happy to share some background about Notations on a River, my single channel video in this exhibit. And with that, I'm going to play the video, which is silent, and speak a little bit about the piece as we watch. Notations on a River is an intimate video. It is intended to be viewed just as it is shown in the Pelham Art Center on a 20-inch TV. All of the images in the video are of the water's surface. There's no horizon. This is a work in 3 movements. The first you are seeing now is shot from the shoreline of the Hudson River in New Baltimore, New York. I work along the shoreline with both a camera and with an easel. Notations on a River was a commission from the Katona Museum of Art for my solo show in 2009. In my video pieces, I use the river's surface as a giant aquatic lens, a giant picture plane that captures, synthesizes, and reflects the sky above, foliage, atmospheric qualities of mist, and on the Hudson vessels. This first movement is inspired by currents, tidal movements, and the wake of tankers, tugs, and barges. Notations on a River is an edited sequence of still images where each image dissolves into the next in a continuous flow as the images overlap fluidly. The quality of fluidity is a meaningful property to me. It is a through line between my paintings and video. This second movement is filmed on the Ile de Ré, an island off of the coast of France in the Bay of Biscay. The images come from the harbor and port. I was fascinated by the reflections at the harbor where the masts of ships and sky were reflected as animated vertical linear curves and motifs that, while abstract, retain a sense of place, composed by the motion of water, its rhythm, and light. In the third movement, the images are again shot beside my studio on the Hudson in New Baltimore. My focus is on the lace-like calligraphic detail and structure of the images and patterns that form from the reflections of trees overhanging the river. I was intrigued by the calligraphic ink-like patterns and contrast of light and dark, especially as it differs from the second movement. My video has a formal structure, where the first movement is unified by images with a horizontal orientation. The second movement is unified by images that have a vertical orientation. And this, the third, where the images are unified by pattern and calligraphic qualities.
And thank you for sharing that with us. So I will share my screen. Okay. So my work deals with, kind of brings together three strands of my careers. I've worked as an architect most of my life, and I have an environmental science degree. So I focused on kind of the confluence of environment and architecture, particularly in coastal areas where water meets structure. And in keeping with the theme of being a more positive take on water issues, I'm focusing on how nature helps defend us from some of the water problems like sea rise. And this piece is called Rooting Down. It's about mangroves that root down through the water, into the soil. And in addition to being a huge carbon sink, mangroves absorb 5 times as much carbon as other trees. It roots down and protects our built environment from sea level rise. And it has a lot of other functions too about how it purifies the water. And then this piece is called Nature Defends, and it's about how nature defends our environment, our built environment. So we're having the natural environment defending the built environment. And here there's a city on a marshland, and the flora of the marshland is keeping waves from intruding into the city and also putting in more oxygen, doing lots of good things, but mainly protecting against sea rise. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that. I'm going to finish up with talking about the show. And it's interesting that Leila mentioned about how the show flows, because it was very deliberate, but in some ways serendipitous, how elements from one piece would show up in the next piece. I'll just give one example. Lauren's kind of overviews of river systems look like leaves, and I hung them next to one of Roz's piece, which also had a very leaf shape. And that happened in the transition from one piece to another. In every case, there was some visual element that carried over from one piece to the next. For instance, this piece was next to one of Leila's pieces, and the kind of patterning in the waves and the color palette overlapped. So even though it was deliberate, there was also kind of happy surprises that happened when I would just spy a connection between one work and the other. So I'll just conclude in saying that it was great showing with all of you wonderful artists, and the work is very inspirational and uplifting. And it's wonderful to have an environmental show about water that focuses on positive elements. And thank you to Pelham Art Center for hosting the exhibit. And if anyone has a final word, they can add, otherwise we'll just sign off.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Yeah. To Lisa and to the Pelham Art Center. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Pelham Art Center.
Okay. Hello, my